I am Charlene. This is From Initiative to Self-Determination, using RPGs as a therapeutic tool. I don't know, who's heard of this before? Okay, so some people have heard of it before. It is...
A loud noise from the other room. It happened to us also.
It is definitely something that is up and coming. We can't call it evidence-based yet because we are in the process of doing the research. So that's where we're at in that type of thing. We're going to cover a few topics here, but I do want to ask your all's favorite characters or what character you like to play when you play D&D.
So my name is Benjamin Taitz. I am a registered...
And introduce yourself, yeah.
I am a registered psychological associate and a psychology doctoral candidate. I'll be graduating next year. Thank you. I am the co-host of two podcasts. She's co-host of one of them, so she can talk about that one. My other podcast is called My Hero Therapy, where we talk about the mental health of the My Hero Academia anime. And I've only actually played D&D one time, and I was a paladin. And my very first role was a nat 20. I had no idea what I was doing, but then everyone started screaming, and I was like, okay, cool. But when I look at like the character, like class descriptions and everything, I identify as like a mix of like cleric and like bard and everything like that. So maybe next time I'll do cleric bard.
Yeah.
Is that a thing, cleric bard?
Yeah, you can multi-class.
A clard?
Yeah. A clard.
My name's Elizabeth Sanchez Arvizu, and I will be getting my doctorate in just a few weeks. So I'm just waiting for the paperwork to go through. And I am the creator of Psychology for Geeks. We are going to be registering it as a nonprofit pretty soon, and we're going to be offering pretty much like just geeky mental health information for free to the community. So check us out. And I also have a podcast, A Pinch of Everything. We're just in YouTube right now, and we just talk about One Piece, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and everything that two ADHD brain can sort of like geek out about. So pretty much every single fandom out there. And I was introduced to D&D through my brother. He was in it from, I don't know, since he was in high school, and he just started telling me interesting stories, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, cool, cool story, bro. And I moved on, and then eventually he started playing it, and eventually I started playing it, and I'm stuck in the fandom now. And my favorite character to play has always been a sorcerer, because I love magic so much. Very hard at the beginning, though, to play, very weak.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Isaac Taitz. I am the brother of this owl bear over here. And even though I'm dressed as a bear, Ian, my favorite character is also a bard, mainly because it's just using a lot of charisma to get through to other people, and a good pun goes a long way. It helps in therapy, too.
And I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Charlene MacPherson. I am a licensed clinical social worker in Maryland. I run D&D therapeutic groups for adults. And so that's why we're here today, is to cover all that fun stuff. I do have a teen group as well, because a parent basically begged me to have one. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first question I want to ask the panel, how do you think role-playing games are used to enhance improvisational interpersonal skills in a therapeutic context? Can you share some examples of the techniques you may use?
Well, so I haven't used role-playing games in therapy because I don't know how to run them myself, but I've used like choose-your-own-adventure stories with clients. I think that it helps with improvisational and communication skills because it allows the client a chance to really think things through in a safe way. There's no like consequences that are permanent. And they can have fun with it depending on what the campaign is, depending on what the story is. They can be more or less engaged with it, but it's not something that is obviously therapeutic. Like it's not like, okay, so tell me what you would do if your parents did, said this to you. It allows the client to learn the skills without them realizing they're learning the skills.
fun.
So choose your own adventure stories, role-playing games, it's all about, okay, well, just embody the thing and you learn it by doing it, and they have fun with it. And then once they learn that they learned the skill, they're like, oh, wow, that wasn't so scary. That wasn't so bad. So that's, I think,
Yeah.
I can't see. I have no peripheral vision.
So I haven't used it in therapy either, but I wanted to ask actually the audience, how many of you have a consistent group of friends or people that you know that you play with? Okay, so and that in itself is just therapeutic. Even if you don't have like a therapist like in the room with you, that's helpful because as adults, it's really hard sometimes to meet with other friends. Or like have friends sometimes, or make friends, but this allows you to have something in common. So it makes it a lot easier for you to communicate with another person, or to start a conversation with another person. And when you add a therapist in the role, it creates that sort of safe space, more of a guidance of your own personal life, not so much like the character, like the DM. There's a lot of DMs out there that have their own sort of like different style, but the therapist has your own well-being in mind. So everything is sort of like controlled. That way you have the ultimate like experience for you. And there is a lot of, I mean, you guys play, right? Like you guys know there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of talking to each other, there's a lot of role play, and that just makes it a lot easier for you to practice.
Conflict.
Outside of sort of like your own person, because sometimes we get really shy and we don't want to talk about something that's really important to us, or because we know that tears are coming or it's a really difficult topic. But if you are playing as a character who has a similar experience as you, it makes it easier. And then the more you talk about it as through that character, it just makes it easier for you, and eventually you're going to be able to get to the point where you can talk about that character as you, not as the character anymore. So it's just a really fun way for us to like start on our like healing journey.
When I'm working with adults with autism or just nerdy folks, some of them have been playing D&D and their characters themselves can be therapeutic. I will ask them if they're having a hard time thinking of how I would handle this situation, what I would do, how I would talk to this person. Okay, yeah, you yourself is having a hard time, but what about, your character? What is it that they do that you like to do so much, that you like to practice in this kind of virtual scenario that has no consequences except when you roll a critical fail? And so we would do a few practice runs, not necessarily, as the character themselves, but okay, your character would operate in this manner. The same way that we would talk with a patient about their favorite hero. What would Batman do in this scenario? How would he talk to this person? Okay, well, how would your character talk to this person? And now you can practice it. And they get a little bit more experience. They get to embody the version of themselves that they play, which is a projection of themselves. They're getting to practice it anyways on the tabletop. They get to just embody it a little bit more in the therapy room, and then they get to practice it outside when they finally go and talk to their boss or their partner or their parent.
Again, I'm going to put it back to you all. How many of you have put some of your crap in your character and you didn't realize it until you were done the game or you've been playing for a little while? Yeah. So we do it anyway because we're the ones making the character, right? So it's through our experience. It's through how we understand the world anyway. What I tend to do when I run my groups is I say, okay, well, we're going to do that on purpose. We're literally going to have you identify coping mechanisms or cognitive behavioral goals that you want to work on, and we are going to build those into your character. So, for example, if someone has a hard time saying no, right, setting boundaries, I know I have problems setting boundaries sometimes, then I will have that character either also have problems saying no, and they will play the character that way, but then have the goal of practicing saying no during the sessions. Or I'll say, okay, let's create your ideal self, right? So this is a person that has healthy boundaries. What does that look like? What does that character look like? What would that look like for you? So then they can go into the group and they go in and they start practicing it over and over and over again with no real world consequences in a safe space. In my situation with a therapist at the head as a DM as well as the therapist, and I'm improvising and creating opportunities because I know everyone's goals. And I know how, the other part that I really love about running the groups is I know how everybody's goals interact. So I can actually like have people work together. I'll have one person start working on their goals, and then the other person be like, oh, that's mine too. And they'll jump in and start trying to help the other character as well. So I've got them not only socializing, but they're working on their goals. So it's a really good tool, a fun tool, to be able to help people kind of start working on their goals on purpose, right? Because again, we put our stuff into our characters whether we we realize it or not. So the next question I wanted to ask was, so the empty chair exercise, it's a popular method in psychotherapy. How would you incorporate this exercise into role-playing game sessions, and what benefits have you observed?
Perfect timing, because I did that the last patient I saw before I came to Comic-Con.
Yay!
So I had a young woman, college-age kid. Who here is still in college? Or vaguely remembers college? All right, great. There we go. Yeah, reminisces on it. Wishes we could go back. So you remember during this time that, you had your first kind of relationships that you were really getting into, and then maybe somebody transfers out. And then maybe they stop communicating as much. And then you get back together for the holidays and they tell you, no, we're still together, but maybe not as much as you think. And you don't know exactly what they mean. Does this sound familiar? Does it sound confusing enough to feel familiar? Exactly. So my patient and I did the empty chair exercise. We had her look to an empty chair in her room and pretend that this was her partner that she wanted to chat with, and essentially assert what is her boundaries. What does she need to hear from this person if they even want to actually continue the relationship? And so we did one round of this, but she didn't quite get anything back from that empty chair. So instead we shifted over and role-played each other as the partner or her. So I had her play as her partner, and I pretended to be her. Now I heard what she was going to be saying. I could get a feel for what it was her partner would be saying when she was, talking like him, and yeah, I don't know, maybe we can totally come together for Christmas break or something. All right, now I know what the partner sounds like. And she could hear what did her own words sound like. And the last round we did where she was herself again, and now I know how to embody her character. It comes from being a DM, it comes from improvising, it helps. And she got to genuinely practice communicating what she needed. And hearing a little bit of how I spoke in her voice the session before, the round before, with some key examples she could have used. So she started to incorporate it in herself and started to feel more confident. And we'll see next week how it goes.
So the empty chair exercise, as a DM, it may not be an empty chair, but when you're DMing, you are everybody else. So when you're playing a non-player character, it kind of is the empty chair, right? And so what I do in groups is I will, again, if someone has issues saying no, I will specifically create an NPC that will push boundaries and be like, you need to do this, you need to do that, and be mean or, not nice or whatever. And that will give that person an opportunity to then work on their goals, right? And I don't expect them to be able to do it right away, right? I'm not going to give them the nastiest NPC ever, the first time they try it or anything. But we're going to slowly, build up to a person who is going to challenge every boundary you have. So that then they can go out and use that in the real world. So it's not necessarily an empty chair, but it's the theory of the mind, right? Like when we play tabletop, it's like theory of the mind. You're not actually playing on a computer. Like you're all hallucinating together around a table, basically. So, does anybody have any experience with an actual case study with someone designing a character in a role-playing game that helped the client deal with trauma, anxiety, or phobias? And how did the client interact with the character, and what were the therapeutic outcomes?
A couple of years back in 2021, when I first started seeing clients in my internship, I had a client, an older adult gentleman who struggled with a lot of, he takes on all the responsibilities for everybody and had a lot of anxiety. Also had some trauma in the past. That is why he did it, because he wanted to avoid the trauma. We couldn't play the role-playing games in session. I didn't have the tools for that, but he would tell me about his character, or we would design a new character for him that he wanted to be able to say, okay, well, this character is the kind of person I want to be able to be like. And so when creating the character, we talked about, okay, well, what are these issues that you were struggling with? Let's put that into the character's backstory. How did that happen? Okay, well, there was, sitting in the village and, the neighboring village attacked and all those kinds of things, right? And so now the character has this new relationship, has all this loss that happened, and okay, well, the character is trying too much. So how would you have this character move forward? What spells does this character need to learn in order to be able to adjust to the situation? What would you roll for and everything? Is it, because it's not all initiative, though initiative is really good. Sometimes we need to, charisma. We need, sometimes we just need, I'm going to roll for, evasion. I need to get out of this scenario that's triggering me. And so we did that. He would bring in, a blank template character sheet, and so we would kind of write all that stuff into the template sheet.
Yeah.
And then he would play it in his game that he was doing
Yeah.
with his friends.
On his own,
Yeah. So
That's
that was one way that I did that.
Yeah.
I have more of a sort of personal example. When we create a character, sometimes we put a piece of ourselves or a piece of who we wish we were into our character. When I first started playing, that's sort of what I did without thinking about it. And as I started playing more, I'm pretty sure every single person in this room who's played, has seen somebody done something in the game that they wanted to try out for next time, or something similar that they wanted to do. And one of the things that I love about working just in groups or being in groups is that you get to learn from each other, right? So if someone, for example, especially in a therapeutic sort of game, because if somebody is working on something, then now you have an example of what you can do if you're in a similar situation, right? So you see all of these examples after examples. So it's not just one goal that you're working towards, it's so many things all at once. And I think the best part of it is we're not really aware that it's happening, and it's you're kind of into the game. It's really fun, and that's what gets
my secret.
So that all gets us all to be more interested, not only in our own sort of healing journey and helping each other out, but also being part of active part of the therapy. Yeah, so learning from each other is something that I absolutely love about this game. And in any other group that I've done, whether I have done D&D or something geeky or not, that's sort of what I've seen. In groups, there's always that support, even without me having to do it as a therapist. Other people play the role that they wish somebody had done for them before. So that's, I don't know, it's a really great opportunity for you to learn and also be that person for someone else.
Let me be clear about one thing. When we use role-playing games as a therapeutic tool, we do not recreate trauma. We don't put someone through the same trauma that they went through at all. What we do is we take the symptoms of the trauma. So again, setting boundaries could be a symptom of trauma. Things like that. We take that and build it into the character, right? And even though we're doing this on purpose, I have still had clients build stuff into their character that they didn't realize was trauma, and or part of their trauma, or bringing up emotions of their trauma. And I had to stop a game at one point to make sure everybody was okay, right? So again, like, this can really, you want to be careful if you're playing a regular game. You don't want to go up to your regular DM and be like, hey, I'm going to bring all my trauma into the game. It's going to be great. And as a DM, you don't want to try and take that on. But if you're in a group like this where you have a therapist at the head, then, you're in, even if you build something into your character that you didn't anticipate you were going to get a response from, you still have someone there and a safe space for you to process it. And immediately after that session, we had an individual session to make sure we could process what the heck just happened. And the client explained this to me after I'd been seeing their trauma to me, after I'd been seeing them for like 6 or 7 months. And I was like, oh no, that's trauma. They're like, it is? So it brought it up, and they wouldn't have talked about it otherwise if they hadn't have done the game.
I'm going to ask you a question now.
Yes.
In that scenario, without going into too much specifics, it sounds as though the client either unintentionally recreated or solicited a scenario where their traumatic themes reoccurred, right?
Yeah.
Now, doesn't this sound kind of familiar for those of us who are like, why do I keep getting myself into the same situation over and over again? It's always just shitty exes, pardon my French, to the young D&Ders in the audience. So this is a great example of how, even when we're just playing pretend, the themes that we grew up with, that we know about, the parenting that we grew up with, that's what we kind of fall into, or at least are used to falling into, and solicit that from those around us. A DM is going to notice somebody is seeking for kind of like, trying to make the giant buff tiefling their mother character. I don't know, call him Mama K or something like that. All right, good. Some people are starting to play DM. All right, so notice that there's these patterns we fall into. And if you want to, either in your regular D&D kind of campaigns, you can just practice trying the different one, trying something new. But more so with a therapeutic D&D, campaign, or just with your therapist, you can start what's called a corrective behavior, a corrective experience, trying it out in this, safe, kind of controlled environment, and see what it's like to try the new thing.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they did. And you were talking about the group. They got unequivocal, complete support from the whole group. And it was amazing to watch. It was a little, as a therapist, when you have somebody have a big reaction, yes, we, kind of go, okay, did I do okay? But it went okay, and the whole group responded and surrounded that person with care and concern, didn't ask any questions, and it went really, really well. So,
and sometimes that's all we need, right? Like, whether it gets so many, because I'm trying to reach more to the community, there's a lot of people that I talk to that have never been in therapy, and they don't really know what therapy is like outside of whatever the media is showing, which is horribly, horribly wrong. In all those situations, I try to explain, what it's like to be in therapy. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, but I'm not crazy though. But I don't have PTSD, but I'm okay with my anxiety. I'm like, well, you don't have to be like, rock bottom in order to seek therapy. Sometimes you just need like a group of people to say, hey, everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Or like, we're here for you. Like, sometimes that's all we need. And like I said earlier, sometimes as adults, we have so many other responsibilities that it's really difficult for us to like hang out with friends, because our friends are all over the country, or like they're also busy with their own lives. So having, that group to be able to provide that for you, it's also very helpful.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of group therapy in general. A lot of research shows that with groups, because typically group therapy is based off of a shared experience. So there's trauma groups, there's veterans groups, there's whatever groups they have the shared experience. The fact of that shared experience is what a lot of them need. They need, oh wow, this person knows what I'm going through, without me having to explain it. Because unfortunately, me as a therapist, I cannot know firsthand what everybody's experience is going to be like. I can empathize, I can sympathize, but not always will I have had that lived experience. But in a group specific to that experience, there's other people. And a lot of times in group, the therapist is more of just there to kind of like, okay, well, we're just going to keep track of things. We're going to facilitate a conversation. But they're all talking to each other. They're all helping each other. They're all the therapists for each other. Because that's what they need. They need somebody who is like, oh yeah, this is what I've been through also. And this is what it was like for me.
Yeah, because even though I'm the DM, I'm also the therapist. There's an inherent power structure there, right? So I can suggest anything, but again, I'm that professional, which is absolutely hilarious to me, so that people look to me as a professional, as I'm sitting up here in cosplay. And
Professional cosplay.
yeah. And, if I say something, it's not going to have as much of an effect as what appears saying the same thing might, because they are validating the same experience. And it can be really, really powerful. And in that moment of that group, it was. And that person had felt isolated for a very, very long time. But in that moment, was surrounded by all people, that were supporting them, through whatever they were going through. It was pretty amazing to watch. I know I'm not necessarily supposed to do it this way, but this is what I'm going to do. Does anybody have any questions?
Small group selection. I know in my small group that I have, outside of not role-playing, but the small group that I have in my practice, I know what I'm getting. Do I do the same type of small group collaboration of the clients, or how do you take your small group?
People are like, how do you find your clients? I'm like, they find me. And what'll happen is I'll do an intake session with them, kind of get a feel of what their goals are, what their personalities are, those type of things. And then I will create the group from there. So if they have similar goals that they're working on, or goals that could complement each other, I will put them in a group together. Eventually, I would love to be able to have an, social anxiety group and, a trauma group and things like that. But unfortunately, right now, it's just me. So I got to kind of take whoever comes and make it work that way. But that's what I tend to do is kind of look at what the goals are, look at personalities, and then put the group together that way.
Well, then you have the intake on a one-on-one before the D&D session.
I do, yeah.
Is that where you are thinking of the likes, dislikes, or trauma type based information that you put down for character sheet building?
No. I will have them kind of be like, I will literally be like, why'd you call me? Because there's a reason, right? And I'm like, what do you want to work on? What are your goals? What are the things, you want to do? And then once they're kind of like, oh, I love D&D and I think this is amazing and I want to do this, then we'll go into character creation, because that is like the most intense part of the entire camp, I run 18-week campaigns, is to start creating that character with the goals in mind and, all that different kind of stuff. So once they decide to come to the group, that's when we start making the character.
I tried to run a game for my son. He's autistic and has OCD and schizoaffective disorder. It was hard to keep him involved with more than 10 minutes at a time. What would be your advice on that?
That's okay. I would start with the 10 minutes that he can do right now. Maybe tomorrow will be 12. Maybe tomorrow will be 13, the day after. So I think whenever you're working with a skill, whenever you're trying to teach someone a skill, especially with autism or neurodivergence, you can't take a neurotypical's definition of this is how long you should be able to concentrate on something. You have to follow their lead. So by only being able to pay attention for 10 minutes, he's telling you he can only do it for 10 minutes right now. So then you may add a couple of minutes, right, here and there. Or what is getting his attention for that 10 minutes, right? You know, make sure you're throwing as many of those type of monsters at him as you can, or the dungeon or the puzzle or whatever works for him. So, you know, in that situation, with my teens, it's the same thing, right? I will work with them wherever they're at. I had one child was a murder hobo as soon as they started. They just wanted to kill all of my NPCs off, just for funsies. And I didn't let them because I needed the story to go, you know. And they were very upset. But that same client now is one of the leaders of the group and has the most creative ideas out of the whole group because I allowed him every once in a while to kill an NPC. I'd actually create an NPC so he could kill it, just for funsies. You know, hey, look, if that's what you're enjoying, let's do it, you know. Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think one of them was Shrek. We had Shrek in a swamp. And then they were like, is there a donkey? I was like, yes, there is a donkey. Everybody loves parfait. And that's the improvisation that you have to have as a DM and a therapist, right? As a therapist, you have to follow your client's lead. I may know where we want to end up, but I have to help get you there. So I have to follow your lead where you're at to be able to get you there. And so that's really, and I know it's not, it could be frustrating, even for us therapists, right? You know, when you want to get somebody somewhere and it's really hard to get them there, or they're resisting it, or there's cognitive dissonance. Does everybody know what cognitive dissonance is? It's when you're trying something new and it feels icky, even if it's something good. Your brain hates change. It hates it no matter whether it's good, bad, or neutral. So when you have cognitive dissonance, it's going to feel icky, right? But, you know, working with that, right?
One of the reasons why I really got attracted to this game is because you can do whatever you want with it, right? So if you have a player or someone you really want to play with that can only pay attention for 10 minutes, play 10 minutes, have a break, do another 10 minutes, have a break, do another 10 minutes, and then you can have 3 hours of 40-minute session or something. But you can do whatever it is that you want with the game, but working with that person. So paying attention to we're trained and qualified to be able to to lead a game as a therapist. But if you're leading a game just for a few friends and you want to become a better DM, just paying attention to things that they enjoy doing, right, would be a major thing, and throwing that kind of game activity that that they enjoy doing.
So within those 10 minutes, there is a lot of opportunity for you to promote a lot of the behaviors that one would like to see in their children. This is very reminiscent of a therapeutic style called parent-child interaction training, or PCIT, where essentially I'll have the parent and the child, normally 5 to 9 years old, but there's some wiggle room there, engage in a play, and the kid is in charge. So they're being more open-ended. It's a lot of drawing or building or playing pretend. But the main thing that the parent is doing is practicing some skills to promote that good behavior in the kid. So if during these moments this kid is paying attention, great job paying attention, kiddo. I love it when you're focusing. The kid's gonna love that because they're finally getting, I'm doing a good thing, cool. Or they're being imaginative, or they're being calm, or they're sitting nicely. All good things you can catch and bring up and point out and model along with them. If they're sitting calmly, you're sitting calmly next to them. If they're drawing a map, okay, I'm going to draw a map too. So all of these things, you can get those in 10 minutes. I mean, that's at least 5 TikToks. So attention spans do get a little bit shorter these days. So being able to kind of get in what you wanted in these moments with your friends, with your kids, in these matches, in these campaigns, even if they're really, really short one-shots. But if the goal is to have fun with them, if the goal is to promote this good behavior, you could do it. I believe in you.
Yeah. And what's their hyper focus? What do they love? What's the topic that they love? And can you make it into a campaign? Yeah. You can make that into a campaign. And they will be hooked from start to finish. Yes. Thank you. All right.
This lady.
Go ahead. Yep.
Just for group therapy aspect, obviously you have the intake and whatnot. I'm playing as an adult now to keep, scheduling the pain as an adult. So keeping yourself engaged in the game, we have a lot of external talk with each other. How do you get it for a group scenario to lead at the table? You have to be, quiet and private about these are mental health issues. You have a mental health campaign. How do you keep it at the table?
Everybody's information, like what they share, or?
Or just how much can they talk outside of gameplay?
Oh, okay.
Because clients may not actually be friends outside of the game session.
So I've not done games a lot, but I've done a lot of groups. And the first thing I always do at the beginning of every group is, or whenever a new person joins the group, is review those expectations of confidentiality. And I encourage all the clients, you guys would not like it if someone was saying your stuff to their partner or to their friends. So you keep whatever happens in a group stays in a group. It's like Vegas, but healthier and less problematic. Maybe there's Vegas in the campaign. I don't know, but it's just you're putting that expectation that I believe that you guys can keep this information private. I am obligated legally to keep things private. You guys are not. If that information gets leaked, I'm the one that gets in trouble. But the thing is, if I am showing you that I trust you to protect everyone else in the group the way that you would want to be protected, then they're more likely to be able to do that. It's all just setting those expectations at the beginning.
And as far as talking outside of group, I can't stop them.
The question really is, gameplay gets exciting.
Yeah.
How do you describe that to a patient? You can talk about this with each other, but.
Yeah, yes, I do. I say, okay, you can talk about the game all you want. You know what I mean? That's absolutely fine. But if someone shares something personal, that stays at the table. And it's a very strict rule that I have, and if anybody I have it in my informed consent before you even join the group, I'm talking about it, right? So that people can feel comfortable sharing things if they want to. The other aspect that I do a little bit differently from a lot of people that do this is I do individual therapy once a week as well as group once a week. So if there's anything they need to talk about and process from group, then they're seeing me again in individual by themselves, and we will process whatever's happening. Now, the cool part is whatever we process as an individual, then we can use in a group. And so it just complements each other back and forth. And I'll ask okay, well, we learned this. This is a new thing you want to work on. Do you want to add that to your character? How are we going to add that to your character? What are we going to do? What are we going to do next? How did you respond to so-and-so doing this? Because I know that's something that you've dealt with too. So that's how I do it a little bit differently. It's kind of a program where we're doing once a week individual and once a week group. So they have processing time.
I think it also depends on whatever the goal is for that specific person, because sometimes the goal can be discussing certain things with a loved one, or setting boundaries with someone, so they will have to speak about it outside of it. But having those initial rules at the beginning, and maybe just reminding them every now the beginning of every session what they are, and we can't really do anything about what they do outside of the session, but having that empathy of this is the safe space for everyone, so let's make sure we keep it that way.
Yeah.
And most people will probably want the games to continue. So that looming threat, exactly. So, who here has tried to rules lawyer their DM a little bit too much and then just got beholdered or an equivalent kind of consequence, because the DM can do whatever they want. That's why they're the DM. So the therapist as well is in charge of how well it goes. So because we're making this therapy session, this group session, so engaging, everybody wants it to keep going. And if there is a rupture for whatever reason, it is also important to talk about it, to process it, to check in about it, and then decide, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And sometimes it is the group themselves that makes the decision, and that can be even more therapeutic, even to the one that caused the rupture. They realize what they've done, they've hurt so many people, but they're willing to make it up for them and give up all of their loot and gold in that very amazing sword that they got.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, that I have found is that, which is kind of sad for me, is that when we finish the 18 weeks, which is not a short amount of time to be with people every week, individually as well as in group, they're like, we want to keep going after the group's over. And I'm like, I can't stop you from whatever you want to do outside a group. And so a couple of my groups, they've shared information and they keep playing afterwards. And that, to me, is the whole point, right? Because a lot of those people were isolated. A lot of those people had social anxiety. They don't have friends, that type of stuff. I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to happen.
Because you get that community connection, right? Because as therapists, we're trained and we can help you and guide you and everything, but we only see you once a week, maybe twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we want you to form those connections outside,
Yeah.
so you have them all the time.
Right, because my job is to put myself out of business. Okay? Is to help you learn coping mechanisms so that you can go out into the world and not need me anymore. And that's absolutely fine. It is sad when they're like, oh, we're going to keep playing. And I'm like, but I want to play. But I'm very, very happy for them that they are like, yes, this is amazing. We're going to keep doing this. And maybe they will spread that, joy to other people, right? And so that's the whole point. Is just to kind of help people make that connection, because I'm not going to be there forever. You shouldn't see your therapist for more than, so it depends on what you're working
But
on.
not forever.
Yeah, but not forever. You want to create your own support system. You
Establish
want to
a
have your
timeline.
own community. You want to do all those things so that you don't need me anymore. My clients all know that if they ever run into anything, they can come back to me. That's absolutely fine. But I want you to be able to be happy and healthy and running around and doing your thing without needing me. That's the whole point.
First, I just wanted to say thank you for superhero therapy. Because, I work as a mental health therapist, and I use that in my sessions a lot. So I wanted to say thank you. A question I had for all of you is, you talked a lot about working with D&D with kids, and for sure, that's the great thing with that. I'm curious, when you're working with parents, or if any of you work with parents or with adults, where do you get to draw that line of we can start bringing in the fantasy? Because I've been noticing I'm trying that with parents and adults I work with, and there are a lot of them, they don't quite have the imagination. Go on a track with elves or go on a D&D journey. What if I tell them role play?
So I'll speak to this one just because one of the major concerns that most, pediatric therapists have is working with the parents. And what I try to do is to find that through line, to connect with the parents and let them know, all right, you want to see your kid doing better in school and making more friends and being a good kid in the house. And for the most part, they say yes. I don't really get too much pushback on that one. And so I give them the tools. I show them this as an example. I'll talk about how we talked about this character in therapy session and how your kid is going to try to be more like this character or try to use this technique from this character. So the cool thing about D&D is there's so many spells and, actions that a character can do. So I'll teach the parent, okay, this is what a short rest is. And when you ask your kid, do you want to take a short rest? That's what they're thinking about. There's a way to recharge their, hit points, their mana, whatever. And so the parent now has the keys to the kingdom. They have the spark notes to understand their kid a little bit better. And I'll give them a homework assignment to try this out. whether it is to do a kind of a special playtime or whether it is to practice a kind of breathing exercise with the kid in terms of their favorite show, whether it is D&D or whether it is Avatar, The Last Airbender. But when they do it together with the kid and they see that feedback, they see the kid relaxing better and they can praise that up, or they see the kid focusing more and they can praise that up, then they're hooked again. And like, okay, this is working. I need to read up on this. I'm going to look in on it. So that's the best way I found to connect it.
There's also like, because again, I just love this fandom so much. Okay, there's like, it's so wide. There's so many things you can do. Like, so if the parent can't really like wants to play but can't really do it, there's like board games they can play, right? So there's like little things that they can have or you can use as introduction to the world and sort of like have like a dictionary for them, like you mentioned, like what it means and what the kid will do. And it will be a great, like the parent doesn't have to be like fully involved as long as he's willing to listen, right? Because this is the exciting part. If you have a hobby and you have someone to listen, like if your parents are like okay with it, like they don't have to be a part of it. They just kind of like, hey dad, like so today this was happened, right? Like that builds that communication. Yeah. There's a lot that goes on in just having that opportunity for parents.
And then really quick, I do mostly adult groups, they're age 30 plus. So what I do is I have them build their character, they give me their backstory, and then I write the campaign. I homebrew the campaign around all of their characters and create a story. So I create engaging story points. I use the story to keep them interested in the game. So that's how I do that. I want to give people a chance to say where they can find you, where you're from again, your name, all that fun stuff. So go ahead.
So again, my name is Benjamin Taitz. I am the host of Mental Health Quest podcast with Charlene.
Woo!
I just knocked over your thing. And My Hero Therapy on social media. And tomorrow I will be hosting a panel at 2 o'clock in this room about Arkham and the villains who receive treatment there. So please stop on by tomorrow for that.
My name's Elizabeth, and you can find me pretty much on any social media at Psych for Geeks, and Psychology for Geeks, that's my website, and you can have all that information there.
And hello, everybody. Again, my name's Dr. Isaac Taitz. You can find me on all the socials at All Mind Health or online at our website, www.allmindhealth.com. And afterwards, you can come up and get a stress ball brain or a business card, too.
Brain. I'm Charlene MacPherson, LCSWC. I'm licensed in Maryland. I run Nerd Adventure Therapy 20. That is the name of my company, which abbreviates to NAT 20. I know you all get it. I do Mental Health Quest as a podcast, and tomorrow I will be running a panel on Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra
At 11 in this room.
At 11 in this room. So if you want to come
stay
do
right
that.
here overnight. Just sleep over, maybe not.
And that's it. All right. I hope if anybody has any questions, you can come talk to us. We might move out into the hallway to give the next people their space. But if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Okay?
Thank you.